Hello and welcome back to my car lift installation project. This is part 2. If you've seen part 1, you'll have seen us dig a big hole and fill it up with concrete. At the end of that video, I said the next step is to wait. And I've managed to do that. It's over a month now, and so the concrete it's not at full strength, but it's strong enough to work with now. A couple of days ago, we reinstated the intermediate post here, and now it's time to get on with actually building the car lift itself. I'll bring in all the rest in a bit, but first, we need to see if we can get this bit working. This is the power pole. It's the most crucial part. With the 4-post lift that I have here, and as far as I know, all 4-post lifts, only one post is powered. So inside this column is a hydraulic ram, and as that's driven upwards, it's linked to the other post by a series of pulleys and steel ropes, and they all lift the frame. I mean, you'll see all this in action, hopefully. By way of demonstration, here's a bottle jack. Now, bottle jack works by large, weak movement here, which provides small, strong movement here. And then when you're done, there it goes. And with this particular car lift, that's all that happens in here. So we've got a motor and a pump in there, but essentially it's just the same as pumping a handle. Pumps up a ram that's in here, and then when you're done, you pull this lever and it sinks down again. Later car lifts get more complicated with control gear, but this is so simple that I'm quite confident I can get it up and running. It's not completely straightforward because we've got to provide this with a lot more than 230 volts. In common with a lot of garage equipment, this is 3-phase. And that's one reason it was so cheap. In here we've got a hefty motor. It's not that hefty actually, it's only 1500 watts. That's attached to a pump. The pump is sat in a bath of oil because this box is actually a tank. And the only other thing that's in here is a bit of switch gear. So this is a switch here that's operated by that lever up there. That's it. So this would have run off about 400 volts, 3-phase. I don't have that. In fact, I've barely got single phase here. As most of you are no doubt aware already, we're entirely off grid here, which means that all the electric power comes from either solar or from the big Lister generator. Both of those provide roughly 230 volts of single phase power, just like you get in a normal domestic setting. But there are still ways to power 3-phase machinery. In fact, I've got a blower over there, which we use off this system. What we have here is a foundry blower that we use to power the organ project. Now with this one, this box was rewired to accept 220 volts, I think it is, and the 3 phases are provided by this inverter, which also gives us speed control. I'm going to do something a bit similar on the car lift, well, at least that's the plan. So to make this motor work on my system, I've got hold of this. This inverter will take single phase and provide 3-phase, just like that one over there, but the difference is that this one will also boost the voltage. So it'll take it from 230 volts up to 380, which will be enough to run this motor, if I can get it working. The downside of this one is both all the labelling and the instructions are in Chinese. But it's similar enough to the other inverter that I think I can work it out. Now it might sound crazy to rely on a cheapo, no-brand box of electronics for something as safety critical as a car lift, but if we return to the bottle jack for a moment, think about what happens as I'm pumping it here. If I just stop pumping, nothing. It just sits there until I release the valve and it goes down again. And that's exactly what will happen with this. And just like with a jack, I'd never work under it unsupported. That's going to be the same with a car lift, but we'll get to that. First, we've got some wiring to do. The inverter's not the only way to make this work. I could go so far as to change the motor. I could even do away with a motor and just have a manual pump, theoretically. It'd be an awful lot of work. If the inverter does pan out though, it's a very straightforward solution. Where it gets tricky using an inverter is if you've got any kind of control gear. Now this, like I say, all we got to do is turn it on and turn it off, which I can do with the inverter itself. So this switch here is going to be redundant. Nope. I should say at this point, I've never even seen this motor working, or the lift or anything. It was all dismantled when I went to pick it up. I'm just doing a very temporary setup just to begin with, just to see if anything actually happens at all, and then we'll take it from there. So thankfully I've got a translation of the front panel, and these are all the parameters, most of which I won't need at all. Program 1. There we go. So I'm taking that down from 60, put that at 50 Hertz. This is what the motor is expecting. Right then, let's see if we've got any life at all. So I'm just going to press the green button and see what happens. And then I might press the red one straight afterwards. Hey! Now obviously I'm being super cautious at the moment because we've got plenty of exposed live parts. I just want to see if we can actually move this pole out. It's entirely possible the motor's spinning backwards. It does mention that on this data plate here. So if it is doing that, I can just swap it. I mean, I can reverse it on the inverter if I work out which button it is. Obviously that's all in Chinese at the moment. Well, that's a great start. The motor spins. Now we just need to make it do something. I think I need to hook up this valve. So this is a manual hydraulic valve. This linkage goes down to do something at the bottom with this. It's possible that valve is open and it's just moving the oil around in the bottom here rather than sending it up the ram. I'm sure there's bits of linkage missing, but I'm wondering if something's dropped down into the oil. I'm just going to fish about in here. Oh crikey, there's about 2 inches of sludge at the bottom. Hang on. That's the missing bit. Yeah, this oil is horrible. I'm going to drain it out and clean it. Yeah, let's get rid of this oil. That's got to go. Look at the state of it. Top layer of oil looked dead clean. But there's all sorts of horrors in there. Well, I told you it was a simple mechanism. Just got a motor, a pump, and I guess this is some kind of accumulator. Good thing though is this is wire mesh in here, so I can dismantle this filter and clean it. But look at the guns dripping off it. Down there is the high pressure inlet, and I've been careful to clean around that with some white spirit to get the gunge off it before I undid it, because I'm very keen to avoid all this contamination getting into here and going into the ram. I suppose at least it's a layer of sludge and not water. So there's no rust there. That would be a lot worse if I had to weld up the tank. Well, we'll call that a partial success, shall we? Got the motor working, which is really good. That means the inverter works, the motor works. I would have liked to see the ram lift up, but I'm sure we'll get there. Bit annoying about the oil being in such a terrible state, but I mean, this is 60 years old and that's probably the original oil, so what did I expect really? And of course now we've just got a big empty box there, it is much easier to move. So I'm going to put this roughly where it's supposed to go, and then we'll go and get the rest of the frame. Okay. Just there. I've got to allow for the pole to rise up out of here as well, so that's... Yeah. Well, we'll tweak with this in a minute. Right, let's go and grab all the other bits. Forward a bit, back foot, good, turn again, good, okay. Open his hair in, but at this end we've got an issue. The bolt here has sheared off in the casing here, so as a bit of classic British machinery, it's bound to be imperial. I'm just doing this to clean up the thread, and then I'll go and find a bolt. In my Land Rover spares I should have something that matches. Good. Good. Let's get this filter cleaned out. So down here, Plessy, which is a name I vaguely recognise. Hydraulic pump, we've got the type, serial number, and here, rotation clockwise. I just want to have a look in the pump. So I'm hoping this isn't full of goo like everything else. It's not much of a view. Oh, bloody hell. What I can see of the gears down here, it looks clean. So that's good. Yeah, because now we've got oil coming out there. If I spin it the other way, I get oil coming out of here, which is the pickup. So the motor should go that way. Put it back in. So that's the one on the end, is the reverse one. And turn it down and on. Yeah, that's it. This is the massive benefit of inverter control. I've got total control over the speed of the motor. And that is going in the correct direction, so that's good. So that's how we want the wiring to be. I've just unplugged that and we've still got power. Yeah, enough power to spin the motor. So that shows you how much power is stored in these capacitors. You can get a couple of seconds of motor drive out of them. So what is there? EBC. That's all good. Now I can reinstall the motor back where it belongs and then sort out the wiring. Cool. Again, this is all very temporary, this wiring, just to test it out. The only change this time round is I'm going to establish an earth path. So the motor is attached to the framework, which is attached to the chassis here. So I'm going to make an earth cable going from this chassis to the inverter and then to the plug. Those of you familiar with Chinese electronics will know that they're not terribly keen on earthing anything. In fact, if you watch any of Big Clive's videos where he dismantles, say, a light unit or whatever, standard procedure is just to have the earth cable just flapping about inside. So I've had to improvise a bit. What we've got then is, this is a temporary earth cable coming from the chassis of the car lift, and then I've attached it to the chassis of the inverter, and then there's the earth here going to the mains plug. So we do have a fault path. Let's see what happens. Haha, we have lift off. What I need to do now is get a final position for this post, mark it, drill it, fix it, and then we'll work on the other three. I'm going to chop up some of this 12mm studding to use for the fixings, and then those fixings will be epoxied down to the concrete using this chemical fix. Okay, I'm now happy that this pole is in the optimum position. I've spent a lot of time shifting it all around. What I'm trying to do is to get it so that the whole car lift sits in here, sits in the carport nicely, but also I want to minimise what I'm going to have to do up here. And it's going to come up right where this is, which isn't a problem, but it's also going to be inside of the roof structure, which is much more critical. You've got to be really quick with getting it in, getting the fixings just right before it starts to go off. It'll start to go off in about 3 minutes with this temperature. But I'm going to leave that a good hour to harden. And then we'll drop that pole in place, take it from there. We're getting there. So for the next phase, I'm going to lift up the whole frame, chock it up with these blocks. So we've got about an 8-inch lift all the way round, and then we'll work on setting the other 3 poles. Just going to hold it down, levering to level out a bit. It's not too bad. Chock it. Before I go any further, I'm going to replace a pulley. So there's one pulley that's duff over here. When I bought this car lift, the sellers and actually the tenants of the yard there as well said that the lift had been inspected. Well, I don't know who inspected it, but they missed this pulley, which is where the centre is missing from it, and it hadn't happened recently either. Fortunately, despite this being so ancient, parts are easily available. Well, the only parts you really need are the ropes and the pulleys, and I found one there, the exact replacement, no trouble at all. So I've got to drift out this pin, and then we can replace this one for this one. Turns out that the pulley, I thought it was a damaged pulley, but actually the problem is it's the wrong pulley. Ugh. So someone had fitted this pulley. This has got a bigger hole than this one. That's essentially it. This is used in other places on the car lift. So I guess this pulley's been replaced and they put the wrong one in. Anyway, this is the right one, but I had to make a pin to go with it. This is off. I think it's. Yes, this is a towing pin from a tractor, that's what I made that from. Good. Been messing around with this and got it fairly upright now, and to do that I've shimmed it with a bit of 5mm flat bar under this point. That has the added benefit of getting the tank slightly off the ground, so this bottom of the oil tank is not in contact with the concrete. I've also taken down a bit of the roof, this little bit here. Now we can see how high we can get this thing before it touches the main part of the roof. So that's our current limiting feature. The ram is just about touching the main roof structure at the moment. So I'm thinking I will cut a bit of a hole in the roof there so we can go up to full height. But even as it is, this is a decent working height for a lot of activities on a vehicle. Let's get this back down and carry on installing it, because obviously we've only got one post fixed at the moment. So as it stands there, we've got to come way up in that bit, and that's done by adjusting this nut up here. That's good in that orientation. Let's go this way. Excellent. I'm going to drill straight through the base of the poles through the concrete. And the weight of the frame here, pushing down on the poles, will clamp them in position while I do that. While we wait for that resin to go off, I can turn this temporary electrical setup into a permanent one. I've got 4 meters of this stuff, which is SY cable, 4-core SY cable, which is going to be perfect for this. This is it's got a steel braid on it. It's not armoured like armoured cable you bury in the ground, but it is tougher than just a bit of flex. Incidentally, you might be wondering what gives me the right to be messing around with 3-phase electrics like this. I can give you 2 reasons. One is that you'll notice on the end of this, even once it's permanently installed, there's going to be a plug, which makes it officially a temporary installation. But more importantly, the second reason, all of my stuff is off-grid here, so usual rules don't apply. What that means in practice, it's a bit like the Land Rover being MOT exempt. That doesn't mean I can run it in an unroadworthy condition, it just means it's all on me. It's not on an MOT tester. It's my responsibility. So this entire electrical installation is just my responsibility. And what that boils down to, it means if I feel confident that I'm competent, I crack on. So here we are. Here we go then, so we've got some strain relief here, and then these connections pretty much as before, but now we've got an integral earth line going down here to the chassis, which of course connects to the motor as well. There we go, all installed. That resin's had plenty of time to go off now, so we'll bolt that down and then we can try this out. Yay. On at the plug. All as well. Looking good. You can see I've got the inspection covers off at the moment, and I've been around and checked all the pulleys, all the ropes, and I'm happy we're ready for a proper test. So it's going up and down lovely and smoothly now, no funny noises, no no awkwardness with the frame, just the way it should be. Right then, we're going to get the big ramps, stick those in place, and then get something heavy on here and try and lift that. Perfect first test. Currently about as far as we can go without the cab hitting the roof structure. Well, as you saw lifting up Kermit, it was easy peasy, and it should be too, because the lift is rated at 3 tonnes and Kermit is roughly 1.5 tonnes, so well within its capabilities. So that's lifting in normal mode, lifting it by the wheels. This lift can also lift vehicles by their chassis, so let's have a go at that. The first step is to knock in these big plates on each corner, and that means we can raise the frame and leave the big ramps behind. Now this is actually a slightly awkward system to use because we've only got the adjustment here on this part of the frame. This one here, because it contains the pulleys and the ropes, this one is fixed. So that does make it a bit tricky to set up. What Bradbury supplied was this frame. So you put that across there and then you can slide these blocks around to fit the chassis. The trouble is, because they've got protruding bits on the bottom, it means if I set up the back to lift on the rear axle, then the front is in the wrong place and vice versa. So I'm going to go with something a bit different. So I've made up my own wooden blocks. We'll put one there and one there. But on the rear, to lift the rear axle, we can go with the Bradbury system, which is these. So it's just a metal version of what I've made up there, really. So these metal chocks rather neatly lock onto the frame here, like that, and then they've got these little tabs that come down and lock it, one on each side. So that can go there. Now we'll come up again, and they should all lock in. There we go. All the chocks are properly in position now, so I'm going to go for a lift. There we are. Isn't that great? Suddenly I've got easy access to the wheel bearings, brakes, steerings, whatever. And this is one of the reasons I particularly wanted this type of lift, because it's got the stability of a normal 4-post lift, but most of the versatility of a 2-post lift as well. Well, I'm well chuffed with that function. Now it's actually less faff than I was expecting it to be. I'll drop it back down, put it into normal mode again, and we'll have a chat about safety. If you've ever been to an MOT station for a test, you might notice that the ramps there, as they lift up, they go clack, 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 and then it settles down and locks. This doesn't have any of that. So it means that if you're working under it and the hydraulics go, the ramp comes down. If you're working under there and someone pulls the handle, it goes down. It does have it has one safety mechanism in case of the rope's breaking. So if the rope snaps or anything like that, down there is a pull which locks in against this bar here and stops the ramp descending. But that's it, that's all the safety features it came with. What I intend to do, and more for peace of mind than anything else, is when it's at low level like this, I simply use a set of axle stands and sit the frame onto those, and then it's completely safe. For high level work, I'll do a similar approach but using aquaprops. But you'll see all this in action in part 3. Well, as you can see, up and down with no fuss at all. And the inverter control there means that it ramps up slowly rather than just applying full power to the ramp, which would strain the electrics. So having 3-phase has turned out to be a really nice feature in the end. That's as high as we can go without messing about with the roof space, which is what we're going to be doing next. Open up the roof space, put the sides back on here and landscape the approach. But that's all for part 3. For now, I think you'll agree that is a major milestone, and it's going to be an absolute game changer when it comes to vehicle maintenance, particularly with your car. Katie's car is about that far off the ground. That's it for now, see you next time.